Welcome back to my series where I'm painting all the orc clans. This time we're painting a Snakebite Ork. First time painting a Snakebite Ork. Had a good time, learned some new things. Here are the colors I used. Actually kind of a limited color palette, using a lot of the inks this time around. Alright, so like my other videos, I started with base colors of the skin already done. You can see the crazy pose to go with the base there. Alright, so I'm using these FW Dalerani inks, the Burnt Umber and the Sepia Tone. These are nice colors and something fun to play with. You see I bring them in kind of thin, and actually some of the overspray from the skin does a little bit of work for me. But I'll end up doing 2 layers with these. They are highly pigmented, but I kind of wanted a deep rich color. The one drawback with these inks is there is a bit of gloss in them. You know, you get kind of a satin finish. But all of that I do end up knocking back at the end with matte varnish. Okay, so you saw the pants got 2 coats of the Burnt Umber, and all the strapping on these sections I'm doing in the Sepia Tone. Doing the necklace and bone as well. Alright, so just base coating some of the areas that's going to end up being kind of the teal color, but base coating it with a light gray, the rust gray, and just base coating all the bone using the Chanti bone. Alright, this is where we're at so far. I didn't actually snap the picture of the color, but that's Steel Legion Drab on the post here. Decided to do something kind of fun here where I just actually wet blended the spear. You can kind of see I brought some of the black ink into it, which is really pigmented, and so just kind of working the color down as the Steel Legion was still wet. Then I would bring back in some more Steel Legion and black and kind of working them until I got that transition that I liked. I found that if you kind of create some dynamic color even in your base coats, so I'm going to come over this with a dry brush next step, and I think it gives this like nice layered effect. I quickly blocked in the blade here before dry brushing. Oh, actually I also blocked in the metals too. That's brass scorpion. I'd really thought like the snake bites would have like a coppery kind of metal instead of, you know, that harsh silvery dark metal. I think it was a good choice actually. I think it kind of went well with the colors. Alright, so I grabbed the Screaming Skull. This is where I was coming in with the dry brush. Nice soft dry brush. Get most of the paint off the brush and really just sort of start to pick up some of the details. Most of this is all going to go over with a wash, so it's going to knock it back a little bit, but you can kind of see a cool effect that's created when you have the wet blend under the dry brush. I even went a little nuts and just wanted to, you know, experiment a little bit, so I kind of brought some of the dry brushing into the other elements as well. I wasn't really trying to be that flawless at this stage. I knew I'd get a chance to kind of clean things up in the detail stage. Alright, so I brought in some lead belcher and did a little bit of a dry brush on the coppery bits. I was a little more careful with this. Next stage is going to be the washes. See where we're at so far. Alright, so the Colia green shade, I'm going to just do this on the kind of stone blade, the hair, and the hilt of his sheath. This gives us that nice teal color. going to use this a couple of times to kind of bring the color up and bring the color back down. Alright, and the rest of them, other than the skin, is going to get that standard Agrex shade wash. Not being too careful, just not letting it pool. You know, coming back and pulling it out where you need to. Kind of darken things up, knock back some of those highlights, darken the shadows. And so that's where we were when the wash dried. Doesn't look half bad. And then I worked in the skin details. All of that is, you know, available on my How to Paint Orc Skin Part 2. Worked in the face and some of the texture on the skin. And that was where he is when the wash is dried and did the skin. You know, he looks pretty solid right there. You know, you could stop there if you wanted, but I always kind of take it a little bit further with the detailing. Alright, so a lot of my time was spent on the strapping. I made a mixture of Upshanti bone and the sepia ink as a first stage of highlight color. I came in and edged all of the leather relatively carefully. You know, he was in an awkward position, so it was just trying to get into all those little nooks and crannies sometimes. I did this for all the strapping as well. I think the sepia had a nice, almost kind of yellow, kind of warmer tone brown to it, as opposed to the burnt umber. So they were able to kind of distinguish themselves while still kind of keeping those earthy tones. That's important, I think, to the snake bites. Evan brought some in on the boots there. Just kind of hatched some in a little bit. Okay, and so I mixed up a even slightly lighter highlight, so a little more of the Upshanti bone into that, and was just going to pick out the kind of most raised edges and the parts I wanted to kind of punch up. You'll see I'll bring some of that color in on the knuckles here. You know, that upraised surface, kind of just like the light hitting it, just kind of gives some visual interest, distinguish those elements. And that's what we were looking like after kind of highlighting the leather. And very similar to the strapping, I just did the sepia and Upshanti bone and glazed some of that color into the leather pants. Glazing meaning, you know, very thin, watered down, working in thin layers. You can see that, like, when you work thin, it can kind of create a natural transition as you kind of build the color slowly. Alright, so I'm going to bring in the bone. I'm just going to paint one of the little bone sections here, and then I'm going to go and just do the rest. Started with the Screaming Skull, and then step up to the Pallid Witch Flesh. You know, you don't want to cover over all the wash. Just want to kind of accentuate the ridged and raised pieces. Kind of let shadows stay where it would be. I kind of felt like the edges there popped in the Pallid Witch Flesh kind of would be a little more prominent, worn away. There you go. You can see I finished the other bone pieces. Okay, so I take a big old risk here. I don't know, I feel like he needed something exciting. I was like, I don't know, why don't I try to bring like some sort of snake element into his pants? So I decided to try to do a freehanding sort of thing. And, you know, midway painting it, I realized, you know, how bad it sounded that you have like a snake coming from your crotch there. But I don't know. It was an experiment. It didn't really turn out all that great in the long run. I probably would have done it a different way, but I just came in with some white and kind of painted this coiled pattern around his leg. At first, I thought I'd try to use this Way Watchers green to kind of give it a different shade. It It went on alright. I didn't love the color that much against his skin. So I actually came in with some of that coaly green shade again. And quickly glazed some of that on. Then very carefully, but I didn't do such a hot job, was just sort of edging the freehanding, and I was trying to put in like a little hatch mark, crisscross in it, kind of simulate like scales. I think in the long run, I ended up washing over it a little bit with some of the watered down burnt umber to knock it back a little bit. It shows up when you look at it closely. Okay, so time to punch up the kind of the teal colors. So started doing some edging with some Sotek green. Again, like I knew I was going to work up to a brighter color and then kind of knock it back with the wash again. I made sure to kind of get the edges of the hair, and I even put in some little scratching with the highlight color. Alright, so I mixed up a highlight color too, so a little pallid wood flesh into the Sotek green to kind of even punch it up a little bit. Again, just taking now the very fine edge. I end up bringing some of this color into the blade here too, just some of the normal Sotek. I wasn't that thrilled how I did on this. You know, I thought it was going to be like kind of a obsidian kind of look. But I ended up losing some of the dry brushed effect that I had before, that kind of caught the most raised edges. So I came back in with the Screaming Skull and kind of did another quick dry brush over that. I even caught the tips of the hair there a little bit. Alright, so like I said, knocking it back, so bringing the Colia green shade back in, kind of doing a thin pass. Well, not that thin, I guess. A thin pass. A medium pass on those items again. Alright, and that's where we were at so far. Alright, so brought in the Iron Breaker. Just doing some quick edging on the Brass Scorpion. Kind of all the little rivets. Edges of the little plating. Add a couple little scratches here and there. That was a quick process. Kind of did the same on the gun as well. Alright, so now for the time that had me scared as all heck doing the war paint. I actually kind of screwed up and didn't film a tremendous amount of this because actually when I was filming it, ended up accidentally having it off screen. I was concentrating so hard on not screwing up. You can see I kind of played this at real time here, didn't speed it up, of just how desperately I'm trying to be careful to do this work. But actually, already first piece I put down, I screw up there. Kind of leave that in, you know. Just try to pull out some of that white with some excess water. You know what happens. I would recommend probably practicing this stuff before you go on to your finished mini. I rushed it a little bit. I got lucky, I think, and it turned out alright. One important point is just making sure your paint is flowing very well, you know, that you're not drying and you know, it's not hard to pull onto the miniature. You can get those clean lines. You can see I'm just cleaning up some of the detail work here. You can see the war paint on the rest of the body. Alright, and then when he was based up, that's your snakebite boy. I think it came out pretty cool. Very different than stuff that I've done before, but kind of has my vibe to it. I think it was cool to combine the two kits and kind of paint with some colors I haven't before. So, if you guys like it, comment, like, forward, share, you know, all that stuff. Thanks for watching, guys.